any drink or food you want to bring it on there. They've got the coolers. They have the ice. They supply the U.S. Coast Guard captain. And the phone number to call for reservations, 239-887-0042. That's 239-887-0042. The Fort Myers Tiki Tours. And give them a call because they're awesome people out there. And so we're going to try and make this magic work here, Pat, and pop you up here. And there you are. Hello, Pat. How are you? Just got to switch the camera.
Hey there, Ed. How are you? I'm good.
A warning that I need to. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
All right. So, Pat, I'm going to have to switch over my audio here. But while I do that, why don't you tell everybody that's watching a little bit about yourself?
I'm sorry. Did I lose you?
Can you hear me okay, Pat?
I'm sorry. I thought I lost you for a second. This is a book about the Mound House and the Colusa Indians that built the mound on which it stands, and the early settlers who built the house. And then it continues and discusses the heroic efforts of the town of Fort Myers Beach to purchase the Mound House less than a year after the town was founded, and how they turned it into a cultural center and a museum. It is a history book in some ways, and also a book about the activities at the Mound House as well. Gotcha.
And I just want to make sure you can hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Pat, a little bit about yourself. You are an author. You've written other books?
I have. I was a professor at the University of Georgia for 27 years. And during that time, I wrote a number of college-level textbooks in the areas of computer science, computer programming, management science. So this book is quite a change from what I did when I was in my professional career. But it has been a great deal of fun, and I learned a lot about the Mound House and Fort Myers Beach, and I hope I have managed to tell the story in the book.
Why did you want to write a book about the Mound House? What made you decide that?
Well, I was at a docent meeting in January of 2019, and our director, Allison Geeson, came in and said, I really would like to have a book about the Mound House. And I said, gosh, I can do that. And it took longer than I thought it would, but we did get it out. And I think that Allison is pleased with the result.
Awesome. And if I missed this at the beginning because I couldn't hear, I apologize. But all of the money that is collected from the sales of the book will go toward the Mound House, correct?
It goes to the 501(c) organization, the Friends of the Mound House, which supports the activities of the Mound House. The way that worked was that I licensed the book to the Friends of the Mound House. They then paid to have it published, and then they will receive the proceeds from the sales of the book at the Mound House and in other locations.
How long did it take you to put all the research together, Pat?
Well, like I said, I started in January right after Allison and I agreed that I could do the book. The first thing was that I went to a panel discussion of Bill Grace, Anita Saracita, Betty Simpson, and Seal Spuler, where they talked about the history of the Mound House as they knew it. And from that gave me a start. I then started interviewing various people. I interviewed Bill and Susan Grace. I interviewed Seal Spuler, Betty Simpson. I had a group interview with Anita Saracita and various other people. And it took me, I guess the research was finished last summer. And I went back and forth with Bill Marquardt at the University of Florida and Victor Thompson at the University of Georgia about various aspects of the history of the mound itself. And I talked once, and Bill Grace and I went back and forth and talked about that. Bill Grace, by the way, Ed, is the great grandson of William Case, who built the Mound House. And he has been very active in historical activities throughout Southwest Florida and Fort Myers. He was very active in saving the Burroughs House in Fort Myers. He was very active in saving the Koreshan Unity campus in Estero, and he's been very active in saving the Mound House.
You put together quite a list of all-stars there that you mentioned. Those names, Anita and Betty and Seal, they could teach you a lot, all of us, a lot of history of Fort Myers Beach. What was it like sitting around the table with the people that know so much about Fort Myers Beach?
It was fantastic. Actually, the roundtable discussion had John Gucciardo, as well as the first manager, whose name is slipping my mind right this second, Marcia Siegel George, and Bill Grace and Anita. And we talked, and they were really talking about the early days of the town as well, and how they wrote a grant. Marcia and John wrote a grant for $1 million. They put it together while at the same time they were putting the town together. They wrote the grant and finished it in about 3 months, submitted it, and got it to them by December of '96. So, I mean, it was a fantastic effort to buy the Mound House.
Why do you think, what was the most interesting part about the research for you?
Trying to find out who were the first people who lived on the mound after the Colusa and after the Cuban fishermen, the first people Americans who lived there in 1890. Turns out that the census of 1890 was burned in a warehouse fire. So there are no records as to who was where in that year. And that was the year that I was researching. And that was another area that Bill and I went back and forth on one Sunday afternoon, trying to track down some people.
Where were some of the, where do you search for, where do you look for research on the Mound House? What are the different, other than the brains that you picked there, what are some of the other places that you found some more information?
Well, there are a number of books that have been published about Fort Myers Beach, the early history of Fort Myers Beach, one of which was by a fellow named Lamoureux, who wrote a book that he had come as a part of the Koreshans, and he put in the last deed on the island. He filed a homestead in 1917. So he wrote a book. The Brown and Brown wrote a book. You go back and you look at those, and of course you do a tremendous amount of Google search,
right,
or internet search, not necessarily all Google. And I found some interesting things there. One of which was a letter that Bill Grace's grandfather had written to the Koreshan magazine, and I shared that with Bill. Another was that it was thought that a family had lived on the mound in 1890, but I found where the father, the guy who supposedly lived on it, had died in 1889. Things like that you track down and find them in strange places, but they still are part and parcel of the history of the mound.
So, Pat, why do you think it's important for something like the Mound House to be preserved the way it is, and for it to be a teaching place the way it is? How do you answer that question based on everything you've done for the book?
I think that our history is important in many different ways, and this is not just a history. This is also a cultural center. dedicated to all of the people who have lived on the mound and also in Fort Myers Beach over time. To me, though I was a business school professor, I always loved history, and being able to write a history book and include as many photographs as I was able to find, thanks to, once again, Bill Grace provided about at least 40% of the photos. So that made it a fun project.
So for anybody that doesn't know, explain who Bill Grace is.
Well, like I said, Bill Grace is the great-grandson of the gentleman who built the house, William Case. He lives here in Fort Myers and has been very active in a number of historical projects, including the Mound House.
So for people that don't know, how do they get the book? You have to get it at the Mound House website, or you get it by going and calling to the Mound House. Explain how they can get their.
It is for sale currently in the Mound House Museum store, which is also the ticket office when you enter the Mound House. It is for sale for $24.95. The Mound House, Allison Beeson has come up with a number of bundling opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
You can buy the book and a couple of kayak tours for a special price, or you can buy the book and some other activities for another special price. So it is there, and if anybody wants to go by today between the time this show is over and 12 o'clock, I'll be there to autograph any books they buy, as well as Tuesday morning I will be there from 9 until 12:30 to autograph any books people wish to buy at that time.
And the Mound House right now is open Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Do you know the number off the top of your head, Pat? Because I've forgotten what the Mound House number is.
The Mound House number.
But by the way, I want to pop up if you can find that, I do want to pop up the cover of the book again so people can see it on the screen. This is what Pat's book, the cover of the book. It's called The Crown Jewel of Fort Myers Beach, the Mound House. And Pat, it just came out like 2 weeks ago, right? It's still the ink.
It arrived on November 14th.
Very nice.
The Mound House
number is, go ahead.
239-765-0865.
Great. And okay, Judy wants to know what the address of the Mound House is. I'm not 100% sure what that is, but
289
type it in the box Street. There. I'm sorry?
It's on Connecticut Street. If you turn left at the Baptist Church and continue to the water's edge and then take a left, that's where it is.
Right. You can't miss it once you get down that way.
Because once it's the highest point on the island, and it's on a sit-on mound that's 14 feet above sea level. And that's an interesting area that I'd like to mention, that this mound was built by the Colusa over 1,000 years of the remains of shellfish, the very conchs, surf clams, etc. As they would eat them, they would then discard the shells and then use the shells to build the mound. The mound right now is 2.66 acres in size, but at one time it is thought to have been 14 acres in size. But
wow.
It was torn down in the 50s to build the Shell Mound subdivision.
So give us Pat, give us a little history lesson of the Mound House without giving away the book. The early days of the Mound House, how did it get started? I mean, what is the basic history, again, without giving everybody the full details of your book?
Well, that's easy to do.
Go ahead.
Well, as I said, the Colusa Indians were the indigenous people who lived in Southwest Florida, and they built the mound over 1,000 years of discarding their shells and other debris. The Spanish arrived in 1513, were driven off, and the Colusa were pretty well left alone for about 200 years. They were finally died out from disease, and then the next folks to show up were the Cuban fishermen who were coming up from Havana to fish these waters for mullet. The first Americans were the Gilbert family, who actually filed the first homestead deed on Fort Myers Beach on the mound, and about 24 acres in addition. They or actually it was 170 acres originally. It's now down to 2.66. So in 1906, William Case, Bill Grace's great-grandfather, came down from St. Petersburg, where they were living at that time, and they settled on the mound. They bought the mound in 1909, and they, even though they hadn't owned it in 1906, they put up a one-room kitchen, and they lived on a houseboat. They then, in 1909, they built a craftsman bungalow, which is part of the house that exists now. They sold the land to a developer named Delisle, who then quickly expanded the house to the size you see now. He left very quickly after the October 1921 hurricane, and the Case family had to take the land back over. The house pretty much stayed empty until 1947, when a scientist by the name of Robert James bought the house and was going to use the property to research local vegetation and animal life for scientific purposes, to make various lacquer out of it or whatever. He died in 1950, and the Longs bought the house. Mr. Long tore down, like I say, about 11 acres of the mound to build the subdivision. Mrs. Long died. He died in 1963. Mrs. Long died in 1994. And then the town bought the property in 2000. And they then started restoring the house to the 1921 form, which you see now. So that's a brief history of the Mound House.
And Dave, thanks. That's Tim's dad there.
Putting too much or too little?
Yeah, putting up the address for the Mound House. It's 451 Connecticut Street. And
289 Connecticut Street.
And thank you for doing that.
Connecticut Street.
So, Pat, what of all your research, what did you find out? Oh, like a big surprise. Like I wasn't expected to find that out, or I wasn't expecting that. Was there anything that came up that really surprised you?
I would say that finding out that the some of the material I had read about the first settlers on the mound was incorrect.
Ah.
Yeah,
really?
In a couple of books, or in a couple of books, it was listed as it is incorrect. So that was interesting to trace that down. And
how many pages? Lots of pictures.
Okay, the book is 64 pages long. It has about 18,000 words and about 104 pictures and diagrams. So it is a beautiful coffee table book. I don't take credit for the beauty at all. That was done by a company called On Point Productions out of Kansas City, who took my ideas and my words and the pictures I had and managed to create a really nice looking book. It was a surprise to all of us how good it looked when it came out.
All right. And the cost of the book, Pat?
$24.95.
$24.95, and it goes to the 501(c) for the Mound House, and we hope everybody grabs a copy. It's certainly a coffee book table for sure, right, Pat?
Yeah, that would be a good idea, a good Christmas present.
Yeah,
for anybody who's interested in Fort Myers Beach.
All right,
because
Pat.
the history of the Mound House is also a history of Fort Myers Beach, and especially the town of Fort Myers Beach and our early council that saved it. It's interesting that Ray Murphy, who is mayor now, was on that original council that made the decision to buy the Mound House, as was Sarasita.
Great. Anything we missed before we let you go?
No, like I said, I'll be there today. If anybody wants to come by and buy a book, I'll be glad to autograph it. And if they come by Tuesday morning, I'll be there then. Let me make a comment about the cover. I really was blown away by the cover that the company put together. If you'll notice, there's a big picture of the house as it is now, but across the bottom are pictures of the house in its various creations. Number one, you're looking in the bottom left-hand corner, you're looking at the house as the case first built it in 1906. It was just a kitchen and a social area. Then in the middle bottom picture, you have a picture of the Craftsman bungalow that the case is built with the first car on Fort Myers Beach in front of it. And then bottom right is the house that Delisle built, added on to the bungalow to create the house you see now. And behind all of that is the original land claim that Gilbert signed up for in 1893. So there's a lot of material right there on the cover of the book about the history of the house.
Nice. Very nice. Well, hopefully you'll have a nice big crowd today while you're out signing autographs, Pat. We really appreciate your time, and congratulations on the book. It's really awesome.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Have a great weekend and happy holidays, Pat.
Okay. Same to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, everybody. Make sure you pick up the book when you can. The Mound House, the crown jewel of Fort Myers Beach. And joining us now from his home studio is our co-host from last night. I didn't mean to wake you out of bed.
Actually, I was working on my truck, so it worked out. It worked out well.
You're taking the engine apart like you were explaining last night?
I'm doing brakes today, but it's